All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video here. If you're on a smaller screen, like a mobile device, if you're on a larger screen, desktop, laptop, something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video. All right, zoomed in a little bit too much. Here we go. So I started with questions that were asked up to an hour ago. So it looks like we'll be starting here with Pete B. But before we do that, where'd my clip go? I want to talk about a question that I get quite often from members. And that is, how does the right wrist move, or the trail wrist, how does the trail wrist move in the golf swing? So first we have to understand that there are three movements of the wrist, or there's three movements, but in each direction. So technically six, right? So first, we have what you would call thumbs up and thumbs down. So thumbs up is what's the technical term is radial deviation. And then thumbs down or thumbs out away from you would be ulnar deviation. And then we have knuckles back, which would be extension. And then you have palm down, which would be flexion. And then you have pronation, which would be inward rotation. And then you have supination, which would be outward rotation. So in the golf swing, when we're in the address position, we're going to have some thumbs, some ulnar deviations, thumbs out away from you. Your wrist is going to be in a fairly neutral position as far as the bend back. It may have a little bit of extension because typically when you're at address, you'll have a little bit of shaft lean, but not everyone has a lot of shaft lean. If you have the shaft more up and down, it may be more flat. If you have it very much forward pressed, you may have a little bit more extension. You know, that's really more personal preference. You can play well doing either one. You just have to find what works best for you. And then as far as, you know, the rotation in the wrist is going to be fairly neutral as well. If you have a very strong grip, you know, if your grip's more like this, you're going to have a little bit more of that outward rotation, right? If you have a weaker grip, you're going to have some of that inward rotation, that pronation that I talked about. So your arm's going to be a little bit more pronated, right? So in the backswing, what we want to have, and a big issue that I see a lot of people do when they're moving the trail wrist wrong, is they'll go to thumbs up right away. They'll go radial deviation very quickly. So when I do that, right, I end up kind of like this, right? And I end up getting too much of that radial deviation very quickly. And that can lead to some issues such as not getting a big shoulder turn. Because when I go like this, I tend to not want to turn my shoulders very much because the club's already moved quite a bit. Whereas if I keep kind of that thumbs out, that ulnar deviation feeling, I'm going to turn my shoulders a lot more as I'm going up to the top. So this is something that we talk about in the power turn course. It's one of the first drills that you do to get a nice wide takeaway. We're talking about keeping those thumbs out away from you, and that's that ulnar deviation very early in the swing. And you're going to gradually move as you go up to the top. You're going to gradually move more toward thumbs up and radial deviation. Now, also in the start of the backswing, we're not going to be extending our wrists right away, right? So you're not going to go like that either very, very quickly. That's something that I see all the time as well. As I see players, they extend that wrist very quickly, and that kind of leads to the same issues. It's hinging that club up too soon. We want to gradually do that as we go up to the top. Now, as we go up to the top, we also want to be rotating our arms gradually, or rotating our wrists gradually. So as I go up to the top, I'm going to be gradually rotating my arm like this. A big issue that I often see is people will rotate that arm very quickly, and that face gets open very, very quickly. And now, you know, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to have a lot of compensations that we're going to have to do. So we want to kind of do it gradually as we bring it back. We're just going to gradually opening that. So that's really the key here, is that these movements, our arm in the backswing is going to be rotating, right? It's going to be having that outward rotation. It's going to be extending back, and it's going to be hinging up, but it's all happening very gradually as we get up to the top of the swing. If we do any of those things very quickly right away in the swing, it can lead to some issues in the golf swing. It's going to lead you to compensations that you have. Now, the other key here is we're not maxing those out as we get up to the top. That's a big issue that I see with a lot of people, is they'll max out that wrist hinge as they go up the top. They'll max out that extension. They'll max out that rolling of the wrist back. We really only want to do about 90, 80% of that, because the moment our wrists, or basically the moment that we reach the end range of motion with about anything, that's the moment we want to retract it back. So if I go to full wrist hinge and full extension at the top, and I'm fully roll back like this, that's the moment I'm going to want to throw everything, right? And as we know, we want to get some lag in the downswing. So what we actually want to be doing is getting to about 80, 90% of our range of motion here on those movements. And then in the start of the downswing, that's when we're going to start to move to maxing those out. So I'm not in my full wrist hinge here. I'm not fully extended back with my wrist, but I'm not fully rotated that way with my wrist, because in the downswing, I want to shallow out the club a little bit. I need to have a little bit of that, right? I need to be able to extend my wrist a little bit more as I'm going back. That's what we refer to as the move in the move course, right? That's that shallowing of the club and extending the wrist back, right? And then I want to create some lag, right? I want to be able to get my thumbs up a little bit more. So we don't want to be reaching the end range of motion here. We want to be reaching that around in this area, about lead arm parallel in the downswing. That's when we see the better players. Now, if you have a shorter swing, it might be a little bit later than that. But with most of the better players that we see, they're maxing out those movements, right? The rotation, the outward rotation, the extension back, and the thumbs up position, that radial deviation position, at that lead arm parallel position in the downswing. Now from here, that's when everything again is going to slowly start to gradually move back in the other direction, right? I'm going to start from the downswing here. I'm going to start to gradually rotate my wrist, right, as I'm coming into to that straight line release. I'm going to gradually move my wrist from extension, right, to a neutral position toward that straight line release. I'm going to gradually go from that radial deviation position to that ulnar deviation position in that straight line release. So if I'm coming down here, I'm gradually moving all of those movements. Here I am at impact. You can see I still have some wrist extension, right? I'm still going to have those knuckles back just a little bit when I'm coming into impact. I'm not going to be fully kind of rotating over. I'm going to be, rotating over enough to square up the face, and I'm not going to be in that full ulnar deviation right here. That's all going to happen in my straight line release, where I'm going to be fully releasing that. Now, that's why we want to release the club out in front, because that's going to allow us to get shaft lean. If we release the club here, if we were maxing all those things out right here at impact, then we're going to add loft. We're going to tend to hit thin shots. We're not going to be as consistent. So we want to be not maxing those things out at impact and then maxing those out when we release the club out in front. Now, after that, then your trail wrist is going to start to flex it as it's coming through. It's going to stay in that ulnar deviation. Then it's going to go thumbs up as you go around into your full finish there. And it's also going to continue to kind of roll. It's going to continue to have that pronation as I'm coming all the way up and around. So I'll go ahead and show you from both angles kind of the slow motion of what's going on here. So again, addressed. I got some ulnar deviation. I'm pretty neutral. Otherwise, maybe just a hair of wrist extension, depending on how strong or weak your grip is. I'm bringing it back. I'm gradually moving all of those in the other direction as I'm going up to the top. And again, I'm not maxing these things out when I get up to the top of the swing. I'm maxing them out around in this area, lead arm parallel. I'm full wrist extension. I'm full thumbs back as I'm here. I've reached my full rotation of the wrist here. Now I'm gradually moving them in the other direction. Again, I'm not reaching full at impact, so that way I can have some shaft lean. And then I'm releasing that out in front. Now I'm in full ulnar deviation and rotating my wrist over. And then I'm coming around into the full finish here. Now I'm in the thumbs up. I have some wrist flexion here, extension again as I'm coming through. So if you look at it from this angle, I'm going back. You can see I'm gradually rotating my arms back. I'm here, and now I'm rotating them down. I'm getting in my full wrist extension. I'm full thumbs up here. I'm fully rotated back here. And then I'm going to start to slowly move that down as I come into impact here. I still have some wrist extension. Now I'm going to come all the way through into the full finish. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, this is not meant for you to go out and try to perfect these wrist motions. It's just to give you an idea, because I get questions about that all the time of how it's moving. Now, if you want drills to be able to work on these things, we want to look at the top speed lag course, or we could be looking at the power turn course first to kind of get those proper positions as we're getting into our big turn. So that wide takeaway drill to not hinge up the club too soon. We could be looking at the top speed lag course to be getting that thumbs up position, right? To not go thumbs up too early and then get that thumbs up position later. That's going to be in the top speed lag course. To get that club to not release too early, right, and get it to release out in front, you're going to be looking at the straight line release course. To get that in the transition here, to get the wrist kind of rolling back, the wrist extending back, right, we're going to be looking at the move. That's what we're doing in the move course as we're coming down. We're getting that club on plane and square as possible, and that's using these wrist movements that I'm talking about here. So check out those courses if you want to get those wrist movements right. If you look at your swing and you see, okay, my wrist is not moving in the right way at that point in the swing, look at that point in your swing. If it's the thumbs up position as you're coming down, it may be lag. If you're going thumbs up very quickly in the backswing, it may be the power turn. If you're seeing your wrist is starting to do this in the downswing, right, you're kind of straightening it out very quickly, right, your arm is rolling over that way, that's probably the move is going to be where you want to go to get that working a little bit better. So go to those courses. To get to those courses, they're included with your Top Speed Golf membership. If you're a member, all you have to do is click the house icon at the top of the page. That will take you to the home page, and scroll down the home page. You'll see a list of all the courses there. Select the course that applies to what you need to be working on. All right. So Pete B says, hi Q, I've been working on the sail fluid spine, power turn, and the move sections, and have seen some good distance improvement. But now I hit my irons inconsistently left and right of the target. What drills can I use to stay on the target line more consistently? It depends on why. I don't, unfortunately, Pete, there's no way for me to know exactly what's going on in your swing that's not allowing you to do that. What I would recommend doing is looking at your stable fluid spine. That's more than likely what's going on. And maybe the move course, because that's what the move course. So let me talk about how those would be related. So to me, it sounds like you're doing the power turn pretty well because you're gaining distance, right? But you're probably not doing the stable fluid spine and or the move very well if you're going offline a lot, right? Because the stable fluid spine is what sets you up to be more consistent with staying on that line, right? So if we think about our stable fluid spine, we're getting nice and angled away at address, and we're retaining that tilt as we go up to the top. If I get where I'm way off this way or this way, right, I'm going to have a hard time controlling my plane. I'm going to make compensations in the downswing. If I'm leaning toward the target at the top, I'm going to tend to swing over the top, and it's going to be hard to hit the ball straight when I do that. I'm going to have a two-way miss a lot of times. I'm going to hit left when I get the face closed, and I'm going to hit slices when I get the face open. If I'm too far angled away, I'm going to tend to swing too much from the inside. I'm going to have the two-way miss there too. I'm going to hit blocks and pushes to the right. I may hit some hooks to the left. So, and it's also harder to hit the ball in the center of the face when your spine's moving all over the place. So that's one area I would look at. And then the move is getting that club on plane and square as soon as possible. I would look at your spine angle first and make sure that is good to go. If it's not, then I'd be looking at them, or if it's not, then you need to work on the stable fluid spine, right? But if it is, then I'd be looking at the move. If your spine angles are good, because the move, you may have your spine angles good, but then you're just kind of moving your arms and wrists down incorrectly in the downswing, coming down steep, then having to make compensations and things like that. So the move is all about getting that club on plane and square as soon as possible. So that way you can be consistent with your ball flight. So those would be the things that it looks like you're kind of in the right sections, but it sounds like to me that you're not necessarily doing the things that are in those sections. So you probably just need to continue to work on them. But for me to know specifically what you need to do, I would need to look at your swing. If you're interested to have an instructor look at your swing, I'd recommend Unlimited Swing Reviews. This is a program that we offer only to All Access members. If you're interested, click the Get a Review link at the top of the page there. That will take you to the Swing Review page where you can see what swing reviews are all about. I don't currently believe I have any spots available at the moment, but some other instructors may have some spots available. So if you're interested, go grab a spot with one of them, or join my waiting list, or join a waiting list for another instructor if you'd like to work with them as well. I try to open up spots every month or two, just depending on if people cancel and come back and things like that. So I can't guarantee I have spots open at a certain time. So, but if you join the waiting list, usually within within a month, 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes sooner, depending on when you join the waiting list and when I opened up spots last, you'll be able to jump in there. All right. So Ali S says, I have a wrist and hands movements during the putting stroke. Can you explain the wrist angles, should alignment, and any top to remove wrist and arms during putting stroke? So basically with the putting stroke, this is a good drill to kind of get a feel for what the putting stroke should feel like. I want you to put your hands together like you're kind of clapping, and then just kind of keep your hands together like this, and then put them out in front of you like this, and kind of push your hands together just a little bit of pressure. And then what I want you to do is I just want you to rock your shoulders back and forth. That's the putting stroke. So you're keeping your legs and your hips still, and you're just rocking those shoulders back and forth. And what's rocking your shoulders are the muscles that are underneath your shoulder blades there, your lats, right? That's if you kind of squeeze your hands together like this, if you kind of put them in front of you and squeeze them together like that, you'll feel those muscles flexing a little bit. That's what's moving the stroke. Nothing else is really moving, right? We don't want our wrists doing this. We don't want them going like this, right? I talked about the right wrist and trail wrist movements in the swing. We don't want rotation in the wrist. We don't want this in the wrist, and we don't want this in the wrist when we're putting. We want those to be all rock solid, and then the only thing that's really moving the putter is those lat muscles, right, that are rocking the shoulders back and forth. And what you can actually do is you can kind of take your putter and you can kind of put it in your hands like that as well, and hold it together and kind of get that same feeling there. Now this one's got a grip that makes that very easy. You may not have the same grip on your putter, but you can kind of get the feeling here. You can, by squeezing your hands together to hold on to the putter, you can get the feeling for, okay, this is how the putting stroke should feel. And now I'm going to take my normal putting grip, and I'm going to get that same feeling with the putting grip. So you can see here, my shoulders, my arms, and my wrists and the putter, they're all kind of rocking back almost like a pendulum, right, in that motion. Now, it's not technically a pendulum because it's not moving at the same speed all the time, basically. It's not the same speed as back and through. You're going to have a little bit of acceleration through there, and it's not the same distance back as it is through. You're typically going to have a little bit more through, right? But that's the feeling that you want to have when you're putting. It's more just the shoulders rocking back and forth, no wrist movements or anything like that. So Roger Packham, just real quick, I see you have your email on here. Just a heads up, everyone can see that. So just for your own cybersecurity, I know we're all friends here and all that stuff. I don't think anybody's going to do anything with your email, but everybody can see your email. So if you want to take your email off of there, all you have to do is click that power icon that's in the lower left-hand corner of the chat box. If you select that, that will log you out of the chat. And then when you click to enter a message again, it will ask you to log back in. And then you can just log in with your first name, last initial. You can put like Roger P. That's what I'd recommend doing. So that way your email's not on there. So anyway, Roger says, hi Q, I'm confused about pitching. The recommendation these days seems to be to keep the shaft, keep the club upright and use the bounce. But how do you then get the sweet spot on the ball? when I pitch this way, the result is a high, weak ball flight. Yeah, I don't really recommend pitching that way. That may be what somebody feels is happening, but that's not the reality of what's happening. We want to have some shaft lean with putting, and you're still going to be able to use the bounce some if you're using some shaft lean. The reality is, though, the bounce of the the bounce of the wedge is not really something that you want to use necessarily when you're pitching. The best pitchers of the golf ball aren't bouncing the club off of the ground like they're hitting a bunker shot. The bounce is mainly it's mainly for the sand game, and then it's also to help the club go through the turf after it's already hit the ball when for better ball strikers. And it's also kind of a safety valve a little bit. So, in some situations, if you don't have the bounce on there, you hit a little bit behind the ball, you're going to dig in, right? Whereas this it's kind of a safety valve to help you to not dig in, kind of glide through the turf. But to hit a really well-struck shot, watching the Ryder Cup, you can hear, like, whenever they hit a pitch shot, you can just listen to the sound of that shot. They are coming in and they are making ball first contact. It is ball first. They are not hitting the turf at all before the golf ball. So the way that they're using the bounce is just so they're hitting the ball, and then the bounce is just keeping the club from continuing to dig into the ground, right? They're not necessarily using the bounce to hit the shot. I think the way a lot of people teach wedge shots, which you're not going to be a real great wedge player if you do this. I think this is a good introductory way maybe to hit wedge shots is to kind of flip it a little bit. But if you have a little bit of skill, I'd rather see somebody get some shaft lean, right, and be able to make much better contact with it. So if you want to work on the wedge game, what I'd recommend doing is going to our wedge system and work through it in that way. And Clay's going to go through the proper technique and great drills for you to work on that. If you come in and the club is upright, it is going to expose the bounce more. You're going to have to hit the ground before the ball most of the time, and you're going to hit those high, weak, not very spinny kind of shots. If you want to hit the shots that you can control and basically hit the shots that you control and have some spin, you want to make ball first contact, and that's basically the kind of technique that we teach in the Toss to Be Golf wedge system. So check out that Toss to Be Golf wedge system and work through those drills. That's what I would recommend. There are instances where you would maybe want to hit kind of a shot like what you're talking about, like if you're in a lie where maybe if you're trying to hit like a flop shot or something like that. That would be an instance where you would want to have the shaft more vertical because you're trying to get the club up. You're trying to get the ball up in the air very quickly. And maybe you're in a lie where it's, you're not going to be able to get much spin anyway, right? So that'd be a situation. But with most cases, when you're watching the tour players, if you're watching the Ryder Cup, watch the little wedge shots that they hit. You'll see it. They come in and they just kind of hit the brakes, right? That's because they make really, really good contact with the ball. And they're not doing that with the shaft straight up and down. They're doing that with shaft lean, ball first contact, bounce hitting the turf after it hits the golf ball, keeping the club from digging into the turf. So anyway, to get to that, the wedge system, click the house icon. That's going to take you to the homepage, and then scroll down the homepage. You'll see a list of all the courses there. Select the wedge system there. So Glenn says, been using the sports sensor swing speed radar to track my swing speed. I find it really inaccurate for swings without a ball. Any experience with this? Would the PRGR black be better option? I would just make sure you're setting it up the same way. The thing about the swing speed radar is the reason why it's not our number one thing is because you have to set it up the same way. If you set it up differently, then it's going to give you different results, right? So it's not that it's inaccurate. It's just that you're setting it up differently with the golf ball versus without the golf ball. The other thing that it could be is that your swing speed is often different with and without the golf ball. That's not necessarily, the swing speed radar is going to track what's in front of it, right? So if you think about the face of the swing speed radar, it's going to track what is swinging in front of it. So if you set it up one way with the ball and another way without the ball and point it in a different direction, it's going to track your swing, the speed at a different point in your swing, and that's going to be different, right? And then the other thing, like I said, is your swing may be different. It's not going to be the same. Most people's are not the same with and without the golf ball. Most people can actually swing faster without the ball there. Some people swing slower without the ball there. And I'm one of those people. I'm one of those weird ones that for some reason when the ball is there, I swing faster. So I don't know why it is, to be honest. But yeah, most people are going to have a different swing speed with and without the ball. So it's not necessarily that it's inaccurate. It's more that you probably just have different swing speed with and without the ball. And you also are hitting the ball. You're probably setting it up differently with and without the ball as well. So I would try to set it up the same way where it's hitting that same, it's recording it at the same point in the golf swing. And then as far as the PRGR, I think the PRGR works well with and without a ball. One trick, if you're swinging without a ball, is I would actually just move it a little bit closer. That's something that the folks at PRGR told us, that if you're swinging without the ball, it'll be more accurate if you move it a little bit closer, because I think when you're swinging with the PRGR, when it's swinging with the ball, it's recording that speed when you hit the ball, right? Whereas when you're not hitting a ball, it doesn't quite know when to record that speed as well. So apparently, if you move it a little bit closer, it's better at recording that. So typically, you'll have it about a club head width, for a driver club head width behind the ball. You're like 4 feet. I would move it to like 3 feet if you're swinging without a ball, if you're using a PRGR. But both of them work. It's just a matter of you're probably just swinging. You probably just have it's not necessarily inaccurate. It's just probably just swinging differently with and without the ball. So Robert B says, Q, I've been chipping by bowing my wrist at contact and extending the swing out low, close to the ground. The result is better than before. Bad technique. No, I don't think that's bad technique. I mean, if you're trying to hit a high one, that wouldn't be what you would want to do. But bowing that lead wrist allows you to get the hands more in front, assuming you're not pulling it way to the left and you're hitting it online and you're getting some shaft lean. I think that's a good technique. That's, especially if you have a weaker grip, you're going to need to bow the wrist a little bit more, which a lot of people do when they're chipping. A lot of times they will have a weaker grip and then bow it a little bit coming into contact. So yeah, I don't think that's bad technique, especially if you're getting better results. Who cares if it's bad technique if you're getting better results? I wouldn't say that it's bad technique. If you want to hit a high one, I would just ease off on it a little bit, and then or you could just open the face and use the loft more to hit a higher one. But if you have your highest lofted club and you have it opened up and you want to hit higher, you may want to not bow your wrist as much, let it release a little bit more. All right, so let's keep the questions coming here. So Robert B says, well, should the trap shot be the same? Are you talking about hitting out of the sand? I assume are you talking about hitting out of the sand? Because that is going to be different if you're talking about hitting out of the sand. Yeah, so if you're hitting out of the sand, no, you don't want to bow the wrist and have a lot of shaft lean. You want to let that club release, right? Because if you have a lot of shaft lean, then that's going to get that leading edge more down, and that's going to make the club dig into the sand. right? So you want the sand is where you really want to use the bounce. That's the main reason for the bounce, is to help in a sand and let the club kind of glide through the sand. That's the purpose of the bounce, is to let it to glide through the turf so it doesn't dig into whatever hitting surface you're on. The main thing is at the sand, you want it to not dig. All right, so you don't want to use that same kind of technique. I mean, you could use that kind of technique, but it would be less. It would be a more higher degree. You would have to hit closer to the ball, and the ball would come out lower, and it would run more. So if you're kind of trying to hit a really running kind of bunker shot, you could kind of hit it the same way, but you would have to hit pretty close to the ball, which would leave you a very slim margin for error. I don't recommend that unless you're very, very highly skilled. Most people are going to benefit from opening that face up, hitting behind the ball, letting that club release, using the bounce, letting the sand kind of throw the ball up out of the bunker. All right, so keep the questions coming here. We got, maybe everybody's watching the Ryder Cup. So Robert B says, Q, the sand trap is all about using the bounce. Yes, it's all about using the bounce. So the way that the bounce kind of works essentially is a good visual is to think about a water skier, right? If I'm water skiing, I want to have the nose of the skis up out of the water, right? If I do that, then I can glide on top of the water and I won't dig down the water. The moment I get the nose of the skis pointing down into the water, the skis are going to dig down and go dive down into the water. So that's kind of the same thing when you're hitting a bunker shot, right? If I have this leading edge coming in and hitting the sand first, then this club's going to want to dig down into it. Whereas if I open up the face, right, and now I have the bounce here hitting the sand first, it's going to glide through there, and it's going to allow you to get the ball up out of the sand. So yes, it's all about using the bounce. And if you go to the short game vault, there's lots and lots of videos about hitting bunker shots in there. To get to the short game vault, all you have to do is click the instruction tab, then click the vault categories, then go to the short game vault. Excuse me. Lots and lots of short game videos as well as bunker videos in there. So Terry Am says, a question about equipment and not technique. At what point do you decide to replace clubs like wedges, wear on the face, or changes in groove structure, or really not an issue for higher handicap players? Not an issue for higher handicap players. If you're a skilled player, you may find a difference between worn grooves and, because a higher handicap player isn't going to be making the contact with the ball that's going to make as much of a difference. If you're a more skilled player, lower handicap player, you're going to find you may find some differences in spin and things like that with grooves that are kind of worn down and things like that. So yeah, I would say, tour players, oftentimes they're replacing their wedges every tournament, oftentimes once or twice a month. But you got to think about the amount of wear and tear a tour player is putting on a wedge is more than most people, I would say. And that can get pretty spendy. I mean, a good wedge is over $100, $150. So that can get pretty spendy replacing your wedges, especially if you're carrying like 3 wedges. 400, $500 a month can get, a month or every other month can be pretty pricey. So a lot of it has to do with your means, right? If you're a really good player, and it's worth it to have fresh grooves all the time. Yeah, it's going to cost you $400 or $500 a month, to be in line with what the tour players get. Is it worth it? No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm a lower handicap player. I've had the same wedges for, I'd say I think I've had these wedges that I have now for 2.5 years, but I don't play a ton. I'm lucky if I get to play once a week. So I don't, if you're someone who's playing 4 or 5 times a week, and you're a lower handicap player, maybe every 6 months to a year, you're going to see some, because this is a wedge here. I had this wedge in college, right? And you can see the wear that's going on there, right? So this, I mean, it'd probably be similar to what I have now. So, but this compared to a brand new wedge that you hit really, really solid, you're not gonna, you're gonna get a little bit more spin most likely with a very, very fresh grooves. And I'm not talking about a ton. It's probably somewhere in the neighborhood. If I had to guess, 500 maybe. On a longer shot, you might get 1,000 more RPMs, maybe. But 500 probably for like a 50-yard pitch shot would be my guess, which is significant, but it's not like you have to decide, is that worth getting all new wedges for? So I think that's more what it comes down to is, yes, it does make a difference having fresh grooves versus worn out grooves. But to a higher handicap player, it's not going to make much of a difference at all because they're just not making the solid contact most likely. But if it does make a difference to you, you have to decide, okay, at what point, financially, does it make sense for me to do it? Because it can get expensive for sure. So Jeff M says, can you walk me through the basics that are key to making a good pitch and chip? I'm having issues with too much ground contact. So, Jeff, I'm going to go ahead and point you to our chipping mastery course. That's what I'd recommend you would start. Go to the chipping mastery course, work through the setup and the drills and everything there, and then go to the Top Speed Golf wedge system and work through the setup in initial videos there to get an idea of what you need to do. So to get to either one of those, just click the house icon at the top of the page. That's going to take you to the home page. Scroll down the home page. You'll see a list of all the courses. Go to that chipping mastery course, and you'll find the videos that you're looking for right there. No video or sound. You can buy a groove sharpener tool for around $1,500 and sharpen your grooves. You can do that, but I would be, well, one, you can make your grooves illegal if you do that. So if you play obviously, if you're just playing to play, it doesn't matter. You can just sharpen up your grooves, whatever, make them as sharp as you want. Have fun with it. But if you're playing in USGA tournaments, I don't recommend doing that. I mean, it would be hard to get caught doing that necessarily, but that it's possible you can make your grooves illegal and get disqualified. So be careful with that. So Tom S says, Q, what's meant by covering the ball? Is this the thought to have to keep from early extension? Thanks. Yeah, pretty much. So when we're talking about covering the ball, it can mean a few things. The main things are with the hands and the chest is mostly what people are saying covering the ball. So if I'm early extending, right, which means I'm standing up, my hips are kind of moving toward the ball as I'm coming into contact. Well, when I come into contact, because my hips are moving toward, I essentially have to release the club early. So my hands aren't, over the ball, right? They're still above the ball, but they're not covering the ball. So this would be not covering the ball with the hands, and then this would be covering the ball with the hands. So it feels like with my trail hand, I'm covering the ball. With the back of my lead hand, I'm covering the ball, right? That would be covering the ball. And you can see as well with the chest, I would be covering the ball as well, right? So if I'm coming in, I'm early extending, right? Then my chest is kind of high and I'm not covering the ball. If I'm staying in my posture and I'm getting shaft lean, my chest is going to be more on top of the ball, kind of covering the ball. So that's usually what people mean when they say covering the ball. That's what I'd recommend. That's going to give you much better contact and compression for sure, if you're able to do that. If you're looking to learn to cover the ball, courses like the straight line release course, the lag course, the early extension course, the move course, these are all courses to help you to get more shaft lean, to get more cover on the ball. Sorry, just trying to find the next question here. Terry M says, thanks for the answer on wedges. Covered all the areas of my questions. I appreciate the depth of answers. Great content. No problem, Terry. Glad to help. John S says, are the budget groove sharpeners no good? I have to be honest with you, I've never used one, so I couldn't tell you if they're any good or not. I just know in college they told us not to use them, because you can make your clubs illegal when you do that. And I could see how you could kind of mess up and like scratch up your wedges and things like that. So, and plus, when I was in college, we got discounts on clubs and stuff like that. Wedge wasn't $150; it was $50, so it was a little more manageable. But I only changed wedges once when I was in college, so even though I could, but yeah, I couldn't tell you if the group sharpeners are no good. I don't know. Never used them. So Matthew says, Q, what is the phrase "stuck under" mean? Typically, what that means is that you're kind of getting stuck, meaning your elbow kind of moves back behind you like this. So if I'm coming down, right, and then I get my elbow kind of stuck like this, I'm typically going to kind of stall out and throw, right, to get the club back in front, right, Jim Furyk kind of gets his elbow kind of stuck behind it, but he really rotates a ton into the ball, and most people just aren't capable of doing that. So a lot of times what will happen is the people will get stuck right here, and then they will stall and then throw and flip. Path will get too much into out. You'll hit a lot of blocks and hooks, a lot of flip, because you'll have to flip because you're kind of stuck behind you. So you kind of have to go like this as you're coming into contact. Ideally, what we would have is our trail arm kind of working more this way, right? So that way we can continue to rotate and get the hands in front. If I'm back here, I have to rotate so much to get my hands in front, and most people just aren't going to be capable of doing that. If you look at Jim Furyk's swing, it's crazy. His hips, Jim Furyk's like this at impact. His hips are dang near pointed at the target, at impact. Most people can't do that. I certainly can't do it myself. So he can get stuck under, right, and be fine. But most players need to get that elbow working more in front, right? So that way they can open up a normal amount and be able to get those hands in front. All right, so we got about 15 minutes here. If you got any more questions before we head into the weekend, if you're just joining, I'm just waiting for a question to get answered, or a question to get asked, excuse me. So if you got a question, go ahead and post them. Like I said, it's going to be below the video if you're on a mobile device. If you're on a larger screen, like a desktop, I'll be to the right of the video. I wonder if we just don't have a lot of people on here today because of the people who are watching the Ryder Cup, maybe. That's what I was doing before I got on here. So Michael says, hello Q, how can I improve swing speed? Went through 20-minute distance fix, but could not improve past 106. So basically, you keep working through the 20-minute distance fix. That's what you keep doing, because increasing club head speed comes down to essentially three things. One is creating more space and time to accelerate the club. So that's big shoulder turn, high hands, right? And then two is sequencing. So that's getting lag and then releasing that lag, using the ground properly, right? Getting that weight shift at the right time. You know, using your legs to sequence the arms and the or using the legs to sequence the torso and the arms and the wrists and everything. So that's what it comes down to. And then the last piece is just swinging as hard as you can, swinging with 100% effort. So most people, when they start, if they've never done speed training before, most people when they start will, you know, that first 8 to 10 miles per hour, I don't know what you started with, but that first 8 to 10 miles per hour is the easiest to get. That's what comes the easiest. And typically, from what I've found, every mile per hour after that takes longer to get, right? So not sure where you started at, but if you started under 100, then you know that first 8 to 10, you know, it's going to be the easiest, and then after that, you got to keep working to get that next mile per hour, that next mile per hour, that next mile per hour. So that's what I'd recommend doing. Check your swing on video to make sure that you are actually doing the things that you think you're doing, right? So look at your swing on video, see if you're actually getting as big a shoulder turn as you're trying to get. Make sure you are actually getting your arms as high as you think you are. Make sure that you are, you know, not hanging back on your back foot, getting pressure into that lead foot, using the ground. Make sure you're getting lag and releasing that lag, right? Just try to push yourself, get out of your comfort zone to get those gains even more. And keep swinging with 100% effort. If you do nothing else and just every week, you know, take 20 swings or so where you're swinging as hard as you possibly can, it will gradually go up little by little by little by little. It's not going to go from 106 to 120 like that. It's going to take you a long time, you know, to get to that point. But if you add in the technical things like getting a big turn, getting more getting more lag, getting that lag to release harder, right? That speed will go up a little bit faster. But like I said, after that first 8 to 10, it takes a little bit longer to get the rest of those. You just got to keep working at it. So Kyle says, how do I build back confidence in my putting? Practice. You just got to go practice it. What I'd recommend doing is find a dead straight putt, right? Find a dead straight putt and practice putting that, like about 5-6 feet, something like that, and practice putting that. Maybe work with an instructor to see if there's something going on there, but practice putting drills. That'd be my best recommendation. Check your alignment, make sure you're seeing what you think you're seeing. Use something like a putting mirror, right? A putting mirror that I really like, that it's fairly somewhat new. It's this one from Back to Basics Golf. I don't know if you've seen these. Cameron Smith uses this as well. But basically, the putting mirror, the purpose of the putting mirror is so you can kind of see how your alignment is, right? So you can set up over this and you can see where your eyes are over the ball. You can see how your shoulders are. So it's a really, really good, for that, it's a good size mirror that you can see those things. Also, it helps you to line up. So basically, you'll line this mirror up. It's got a line on it, right? You'll line this up. I try to find a dead straight putt and line this up. So that way you can make sure that you are aligned, right? Because a lot of times our putting gets off because we're just not aligned right. We're basically aiming to the left sometimes. You know, that's my tendency, is I tend to aim to the left too much, and I miss a lot of putts to the left. So I have to constantly be. It's just my eye wants to see it to the left, and if I use this, then it keeps me kind of dialed in a little bit more. The other thing that I think is really cool about this is it's got the stroke thing on there. So basically, it's kind of your stroke should be kind of a slight arc. So it's showing how the face should line up with that arc as you're bringing it back, right? So you can kind of see, okay, is my putter, it kind of helps with the eyes to see the putter kind of tracking along that. And then it's also got these gates that you can make. These are all holes where you can put a tee, and you can put a tee in there and then make sure that you're staying within there, right? So yeah, using something like this can really tell a lot of the things that are maybe being issues with your putting. You know, if you're not hitting the ball in the center of the face with the putter, it makes a big difference. If you're not aligning with the hole, it makes a big difference, right? Beyond that, you know, you got to look at your speed. Is your speed off, you know, due to those things? So that's what I'd be looking at. Again, I don't have any affiliation with these guys. It was just funny. I actually had this idea to do something like this, like a year ago or so. And because I really like putting mirrors. And then Phil Kenyon, who's a world-renowned putting coach, he has he's this Vizio company, and they're just mats that have the stroke thing on there. And I always like that. And I thought, well, it would be cool if you combine a mirror with that stroke thing, because I found that I was using them, you know, separately, right? And then like a few months ago, I was on Instagram and I saw an ad for one of these. And I was like, well, somebody already thought of it. So I bought one. I became a customer. So yeah, I really like this. Again, it's back to basics golf. Number 2, I don't have any affiliation with these guys. I just think it's a cool. This is really helpful for me. This helps me with my putting a lot. So, but you gotta go practice it. You gotta get comfortable with your stroke. Go practice, and you'll improve your putting. I wouldn't expect to get your confidence back on the course, you know, if you're not practicing, because it's just hard. It's just hard to do. You're not taking enough putts. Every putt that you miss, you lose confidence. So, and also, you know, I find a lot of people who don't have a lot of confidence putting is because they have very high expectations with the putting. What may also be helpful for you to get your confidence back with the putter is to go look at putting statistics on the PGA Tour and what their make rate are from certain distances, right? So an 8-foot putt, it's 50-50, right? It goes down drastically as you get down outside of 8 feet. So, you know, if you're making 50% of your 8-foot putts, you're a really good putter because you're PGA Tour level, because that's what PGA Tour players are doing. Not to mention, PGA Tour players are always playing really nice greens. I know most of us aren't playing, you know, basically perfect greens. They're playing greens that are rolling true. So if you're playing greens that aren't perfect and you're making 50% of your 8-footers, you are an elite putter. So keep that in mind. All right. So Tom S says, if I use a tennis rack, I think he means tennis racket motion, I find it difficult to close the club the right amount without hooking the ball. I do much better with pet the grass motion, which closes the club later. Should I still try to work on closing the club earlier? So basically, you either need to get more shaft lean or you need to ease up on the bowing of the wrist. You may have a strong grip, so you may not need to do as much bowing of the wrist. So the weaker your grip is, the more you need to bow it. So imagine when I say weak grip, I mean that's how your hands are positioned on the grip. It's not the pressure that you're putting into the handle. It's the hand positioning. So if I have my thumb more on top of the grip like this, right? So here's the logo of the grip. If my thumb's more on top, that's a weak grip. So if I come into contact and I square up the face and I have shaft lean, I have to have some bow in my lead wrist in order to square up that face and have shaft lean. Colin Morikawa, best ball striker, iron player on tour, has a weak grip. And if you look at him at impact, he has a lot of bow in his lead wrist. He has to do that in order to square up the face when he has the shaft lean, right? If you're someone who has a stronger grip, meaning your thumb is more on the side of the grip. So it's basically like taking your hands from on top, taking your thumbs from on top and putting them more on the side, right? If I do that, right, when I come into contact, you can see there, I don't have to have it. My wrist may even appear to be cupped. It's not. If you look at it from this angle, it still has a slight amount of bow in it, but it is, much less bowed, right? And I can have shaft lean and a square face when I do that. So that's essentially what you have to look at there to get the face squared up. So if you're coming in and if you have a strong grip and then I bow the wrist some more, I'm just going to close the face. I'm going to hit those hooks, right? My other option would be to get a lot more shaft lean. If I push the handle more forward, that's going to open up. So I look at your swing on video and see, okay, am I getting shaft lean? Am I getting this club to release out in front about 45 degrees? If you're not, then you need to get more shaft lean to square that face up, right? Because the shaft lean is the releasing of the club early is what's closing the face. If you're seeing you have plenty of shaft lean, right, and you're bowing the wrist so much that it's closing the face, then you either need to weaken the grip so that way you can use that much bowing, or the easier thing would be just to do less bowing of the wrist, right? So that's what I'd be looking at to do to straighten things out. So Matthew W says, Q, what is the best drill for getting the body moving at top of backswing before starting downward toward the ball? I'd recommend the step drill. So the step drill is a drill where we put our feet together, right? And what we're going to do is as soon as we start this club going back, and I would just do this with practice swings at first, and I'll refer you to a video where Clay I can't do the full demonstration in here because I don't want to hit my wall or anything. But I'll give you that. But what we're doing here is we're starting with our feet together, not hitting a ball, especially at first. You can maybe hit a ball later, but at first, definitely not. But what we're going to do is as soon as this club starts going back, I'm going to start stepping forward, right? So my club's going back and I'm stepping forward as my club's going back. So what that's doing is that's getting me the feeling of shifting pressure to my lead foot before I start my downswing. That's really what we want to do, is we want to get pressure moving into the lead foot before we start the downswing. That's what we're seeing in the better players. Usually that pressure in the back foot, in the trail foot, is maxing out in this area, and then we're starting to move that pressure to the lead foot as we get up to the top, right? So if we do that, what we can do is we can exaggerate that feeling in a step drill. We start with our feet together, and as soon as we start forward, as soon as we start the backswing, our pressure is maxing out in our trail foot, and we're pushing it toward the lead side. And you want that foot to get on the ground, and then you start that downswing. So that would be the step drill. If you want to check out a great video for working on the step drill, in the upper right-hand corner, use the search box. This is a vault video. It's called How to Start the Downswing, I believe is what it's called. But the code for the video, we put a code on all of the vault videos. It's BR014. So Bob Ryan 014. So if you search BR014 in the upper right-hand corner, the little search box there, you'll find this video. Now, if you're on a mobile device, you can search the video by clicking the icon in the upper right-hand corner. That will expand a menu. Scroll down to the bottom of that menu. You'll find the search box. Put in BR014, Bob Ryan 014, and you'll find the video where Clay goes into more detail about that step drill. So check that video out. That's going to really help you to get that body moving in the right direction, get that pressure shift moving at the right time to get the downswing started in the right way. All right, so that's the end for today. We're right at noon. It's lunchtime for me. So everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy the Ryder Cup. Go USA. And I'll talk to you all on Monday. Thanks.